Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me today on this valuable webinar. Today, we're going to talk about a very important subject, and this is improving our cognitive function. So, first, we can talk about typical causes of cognitive imbalance. I think most of you, though, are thinking in terms of just being forgetful. But, the brain is, in Ayurveda, is very associated with the nervous system. So the nervous system and the brain function, in Ayurvedic terms, are working together. They're actually governed by three energies, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata is the prana, the life force. And Pitta is, we call Sadaka Pitta, is the ability to recall. And Kladaka Kapha is the white brain matter. So there can be an imbalance with any of these three areas. If it's too active, then you're going to feel nervousness, anxiety, sleeplessness. Maybe you have other neurological problems as well, besides forgetfulness, like tingling, numbness in the hand, tremor, shaking, and of course, racing mind, and Parkinson's and MS and other types of serious neurological problems would be in the same category as they progress along a pathology. So early memory problems are a pathology that can develop into more serious neurological problems. The second category would be kind of a depressed nervous system, which would create more of lethargic, slowness, dullness, and melancholy, we could say, or of course, depression. So we have one, Vata, behind it, which is active, overly active, thinking too much, can't concentrate, going to bed and thinking. Then two, which is kind of congested, which is Ayurvedic terms was too much Tapaka Kapha, where things are slow and you're depressed and sad and you're having difficulty recalling memory. So I'm explaining it from this Ayurvedic or ancient understanding of the brain and how it's managed by the nervous system. It's governed by the nervous system. So these are neurological related imbalances. And the third category is when it becomes too pitta, too sharp, too strong, too heated. And here we can have even a bald head, burning off the hair, graying of the hair, and a sharp temper, being more judgmental, argumentative. And of course, this type of, we could say, inflammatory nerve condition can result in very serious neurological problems, including MS, or is it damage to the actual nerve itself. So when we look at early signs of like memory loss or anger or depression, this is the beginning of a pathology which can develop into more serious neurological problems. So let's first look. We're going to cover, of course, herbs today. But it's very important to cover the cause, because the first line of treatment for any condition is what? Remove the cause. And this is often ignored by even holistic practitioners. Of course, it's completely ignored by the medical world, the causes. For example, if you're diabetic, then your cause is your excessive use of sugar, sweets in your diet. So if your mind is overly active and you can't stop thinking at night, even though you're tired and fatigued, then what is the cause? Maybe you know better than I do, but I'll give you a few lists. Overstimulation would be the main cause. What's overstimulating? We have our whole life is overstimulating. Our whole lifestyle is overstimulating. And that's why we have so many of these type of mental imbalances. Whether we classify them, in medical terms, we could just easily say that they're imbalances. The mind is not stable. The mind is, in this particular case, overly active, overly stimulated. The nerves are overly sensitive. So we want to remove the causes. And if you can't sleep at night, what would want to be the causes you'd want to remove? Stimulation. And that, of course, would be the first thing that we see in our modern world is coffee. Coffee, sugar, caffeine, even decaf has a stimulating effect to it. Even chocolate or cacao without the sugar is considered very stimulating, as people know. And sugar, super stimulating. Sweets at night, candies. We're not talking about fruit. We're talking about processed white sugar. Cane sugar can also be stimulating but healthy. So you still wouldn't want to have products with cane sugar right before going to bed. But overall, cane sugar doesn't necessarily have to be unhealthy. But white processed sugar, cookies, crackers, cakes, candies, ice cream, very stimulating, much more than we give it acknowledge. And all the green teas, black tea, green tea, yerba mate, all of these have some amount of stimulating aspects to them. So if your mind is overly active, thinking too much, borderline anxious, and you're having some sleeping problems, then first thing to do before I start taking these herbs, which we're going to talk about, is to remove these stimulants from your life, which can include, of course, even just TV, the news, too much activity, multitasking on the computer, too much time on the computer, and just an overly active life. So instead of running, you can do yoga. Instead of watching TV at night, you could read a book. Instead of working on your computer at night, you could read a book again. So you need to do things that are slower to not stimulate it. So it's very, herbs are very effective at modifying our thinking, as we know, because now here in the state of California and many states, cannabis is legal, and those who have had cannabis know that only a little bit will change your state of mind. So the mind and the nervous system are very sensitive to herbs. Cannabis was just one ancient herb, was used for certain types of conditions. Not everything as it's proclaimed to today, but it did have therapeutic and medicinal value even in ancient times. And it was helpful in settling the nervous system, calming the nervous system, and analgesic qualities of helping with pain. So before you start taking any type of herbal product that can change and affect your thinking and your mood quite quickly, it's good to eliminate the causes first. So other causes, of course, would be a malnourishment. We know that if you're low in B vitamins, you're going to have more anxiety, B6, B12. These will affect the nervous system adversely. Even not enough magnesium, trace minerals. So malnourishment, malnutrition. And what's the main cause behind malnourishment or malnutrition in our modern society is usually malabsorption. And the main cause behind malabsorption is generally poor digestion. And the main cause behind poor digestion is, of course, poor eating habits, overeating, eating late at night, not having complete meals and allowing the body to finish the digestive process of the last meal. So there you could see, you can take the causes behind the causes as the causes to get to the root of the problem. And that's why in Ayurveda, they can continue back always to find that there's a digestive element as a cause to almost every health condition. And it's definitely true here, because if you have poor digestion, then you can have poor malabsorption and low nutrients. And then this nutritional deficiencies, particularly like these trace minerals and magnesium, B6, B complex in general, will affect your mental capacity. That's why we like to take magnesium at night to relax, and we like to take B12s and B complex in the morning to help stimulate and support our nervous system. But these are only short-term fixes. In fact, many of those are synthetic vitamins and isolated in a laboratory and don't grow on trees. I mean, there's no tree growing D3 or ascorbic acid. So herbs, on the other hand, are organic matter grown plants, barks, leaves, and minerals, saps, and other natural substances found in nature. So they have a full spectrum of nutrients. And in many ways, some of these herbs are considered food for the nervous system. So instead of providing the vitamins and minerals that you're missing, Ayurveda would focus on improving your digestion so you don't have to take these supplements, and then give you the right food for your nervous system. So it's always very important before we start treating ourselves or anybody else to determine these causes and try to eliminate them, particularly when we're talking about children. I consulted for an organization for a while that helped with children who had supposed learning disabilities. And my role was to come in once a month and meet the parents and consult them on nutrition. They didn't really want me talking about herbs, so they said, talk about nutrition, so fine. And then I asked all the parents there, about their children and how many of them allowed any level of sugar or sweets. They all raised their hands. So then I said, how many people, I did the same thing for each month. And how many parents here see that their children are aware that their children are having, a lot of sugar products, cakes, cookies, candies, things like this on a somewhat daily basis, including, of course, ice cream. And I would say 1/4 to 1/3 of the people raise their hand. So I said, there's no point to be talking to me about nutrition or looking at taking some type of pharmaceutical when you are the cause. And unless your child has money and is going out in the car and buying this ice cream, then you are the cause. You're causing this imbalance. So with your child by providing too much sweets. And of course, sugar is harmful in more than one way. One, it's depleting you nutritionally. And again, we're not talking about eating a banana or date or natural sugars or fructose. We're talking about processed white sugar in the form of candy and these sweets. So that depletes you of nutrients, overstimulates your nervous system, doesn't supply any type of support for your nutrition, doesn't supply any nutrition for the body. It just stimulates it, which often encourages not eating enough and skipping meals. And then there's an emotional roller coaster that takes place where the child in particular's energy can be quite high and then come crashing back down. And this creates a type of unstable emotional state for the child, which only feeds the whole problem of instability and their inability to focus. So I think it's not wise to jump to taking herbs or pharmaceuticals, in particular, without looking at these causes: stimulation, coffee, sugar, digestion in the diet, and really improving these first. Then, so focusing on diet, lifestyle, digestion first, then herbal treatments. And then, in certain situations, it may be warranted to take pharmaceuticals. But I believe it's been over-relied upon, when in fact, the parents, in many of these cases, are the responsible person. Or for an adult and we're having these type of attention issues, then we need to look at ourselves as well. And of course, another cause for neurological problems would be toxins. And this relates to the second category. The first category in Ayurveda is Vata, where there's too much prana, too much lightness, too much activity, too much thinking, nervousness, inability to focus. But remember the second I put it in the order of the third category, Pitta, where there's heat, burning, inflammation, pain, sharp headaches, anger, irritability. This is another category in Ayurveda. And a lot of times this is due to toxins in the system. So toxicity is affects every cell in our body and can create inflammation in our muscles, inflammation in our joints, can adversely affect our liver, and sensitive systems in our body, like the nervous system, can be affected. And then we will see this reflected in the characters and of the mind and the thinking, because the mind or the brain is supported by the nervous system. So if you have toxins in your life that you are breathing in, inhaling carbon monoxide, or toxins accumulated in your liver to the point where your liver's not able to bear the burden of these toxins from maybe your past work or working environment or life. We live in a very toxic world. Then it can overwhelm your liver, and these can then be going through your skin, through your blood, and show up on your skin in forms of rashes, marks, and show up in your head in terms of headaches, irritability, anger, and this type of inflammation that results from these toxins. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients, I'm cleansing out the toxins out of their joints. That's helping with their arthritic inflammation, cleansing the toxins out of their muscles, helping with their muscle inflammation. A lot of people say my mood got better, became more calm, became less irritable, and my headaches went away. But I didn't treat it because I was just helping the liver to remove these toxins out through the bile and then out through the GI tract, out of the body slowly. And then headaches and other mental disorders or imbalances went away. And this is very common in my practice because many people have major imbalances in their system. And when they are balanced, then the nervous system is one of the first things to change. The third area I did speak about was actually in order I brought it up as second. That's kind of kapha in the nervous system, and then where it's sluggish and slow. So a person who's got blocked liver, poor circulation, with varicose veins, maybe you had gallbladder problems, constipation problems, you can see a tendency of being clogged. Maybe they're overweight, they got water retention, so there's maybe some blockage in the kidneys. We know there's blockage in the gallbladder. Doctors talking about fatty liver. So we can see a lot of blockage and congestion. Well, this same person, if you ask them about their mental state, they'll say, yeah, I can't remember. Everybody says I'm slow and it's not fast and the recall isn't there. I can remember things long time ago, but nothing short term. The long-term memory is good and the short-term memory is poor. That's what we call kapha state. It's kind of a clogged, congested, and it's evident with poor circulation. So, and so that the cause is this type of blockage in the system. So you want to improve the circulation, get the circulation moving. If the circulation's poor, the brain's not getting enough oxygen. It's not able to support the brain. And you're going to have this type of slow type of response. But of the three categories, the vata, the overactive and depleted type of mental state, and then pitta, the anger type of state, and the kapha, the depressive type of state. The most common is the vata. And I did read something recently. Somebody sent me about the brain, that they've determined that when it shrinks a little bit, and then this creates a lot of cognitive problems. I'm not so much interested in modern research as I'm interested in ancient understanding of these subjects. But Ayurveda in the past did talk also about the brain shrinking, and that is a vata type of state where there's a depletion, there's a lack of. So we see people, for example, with a lot of cognitive problems or dementia and Alzheimer's who have been on low-fat diets for 40 years. When I have an elderly person and they're talking about dementia or serious cognitive problems, then I ask them, have you been on a low-fat diet? And almost inevitably, they proudly tell me they've been on a low-fat diet, doing low-fat milk and no ghee and no butter for some length of time. So and now they have no recall. And because there's now blockage in the neurological ability, and this is due to kind of in Ayurveda, kind of a shrinking, a drying out of the brain itself. Dehydration is a major cause of a lot of health problems, and we often don't take it as seriously as it is, because all the organs require hydration. I mean, just to eat, you need saliva in the mouth. To digest, you need the enzymes and juices of the stomach. And in the colon, we can't have it too dry, or we'd have it kind of a dry, hard constipation leading to hemorrhoids and inflammation in the colon. And of course, to have sex, you can't be dry too. So, you can't procreate when you're dehydrated, and you can't digest when you dehydrate. And we will just see the dry skin, the cracking skin, the itchy skin on the surface, but deep inside the body is dry, particularly when the mouth is dry. The mouth should be the most moist point of the body. The saliva in the mouth should always be there. It's necessary. So when you have this type of dehydration that's evident with the dry lips, dry mouth, dry skin, dry stools, then we can assume the organs are dry. And if the bile in the liver gets too dry, it gets clogged, and you can have gallbladder problems. The colon gets too dry, you have constipation. So if the brain gets too dry, then you can have serious cognitive problems. And that's what this article was referring to, that the brain actually can shrink when it doesn't have enough fat and liquid quality to it. And this contributes to severe memory loss. So this is why you see that a lot of the herbs, which we're going to talk about here next, are actually taken in ghee, in butter, and you're actually doing a high-fat diet. If it's in this category, if it's in the category where you're completely overweight and blocked, a kapha imbalance, and you wouldn't be taking it in a ghee. So that's why it's very important to have a proper diagnosis. If you don't have a proper diagnosis, then you're kind of guessing. So you have to understand, and to diagnose, you have to understand the cause. What was the cause? And then you understand what type of imbalance is it. We could say short-term memory, long-term memory. That's a simplistic way to put it. But in Ayurveda, we have, high vata, overly active, and then a kind of also high vata, which is like dried out, which we talked about. High pitta, which is burning, hot, irritable, and then kapha, which the system just becomes clogged. So we want to, and there's a few more categories, but we want to be able to categorize it correctly, because all herbal treatments are based on the proper diagnosis. If you cannot diagnose what type of condition you have, then the herbal treatment won't be right. I mean, it's not so simple as just taking a pill or taking an herb. Unfortunately, we have to understand the cause. So generally, we have to do this diagnosis first. But I'm going to talk about some herbs here. And if you're having trouble diagnosing your problem, then, of course, you're better to have somebody to help you to do that. Let's talk about a few herbs here. Let's talk about really one of the best and one of the oldest herbs to help cognitive function, and that's ginkgo. And ginkgo is a very ancient tree that apparently was around at the time of the dinosaurs. So, it's not only is it good for memory, it hasn't been forgotten itself. I mean, and ginkgo is slightly stimulating, improving circulation, particularly to the brain, bringing more oxygen to the brain. And there's been a lot of research on it, and it's very helpful. Probably one of the premier Western herbs for improving cognitive function. And generally that's supported with gotu kola. Gotu kola is particularly good. It's related to a brahmi, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's a calming herb, cooling herb, and improves circulation to the whole body, but again, particularly to the mind. I have a tea here. It's called Memory and Energy Tea. And the first ingredient is ginkgo. And the next, because it's energy as well, the next ingredient is green tea. That's for the energy. And then next is the gotu kola for the circulation. And then peppermint, make it taste nice and pleasant. Eleuthero is a type of Siberian ginseng, good for energy. And sage, which is also good for circulation. Rosemary, a very premier herb for circulation. And ginkgo is kind of like a catalyst type of herb to bring them all together to work very well. But the main herb here is ginkgo and gotu kola. And in fact, we could have a tea. It's just this memory tea. I have another one called memory and brain tea. And that tea is the same without the stimulants, without the green tea, without the elethro, and it has a brahmi in it as well, which we're going to talk about. So this is a wonderful tea. Oh, it reminds me, I can have a cup right now. I drink 2 or 3 cups of this a day. It's very pleasant, tastes very good, gives you nice energy all day long, and really does help with your memory. In fact, when I'm forgetting things, my son says, Dad, go drink some of your memory tea. Now, if we talk about Indian herbs for cognitive function, the premier herb is brahmi. Brahmi. And that's the only form I have it in there. I have it. It also, I use it in a powder form here. Brahmi, right from India. The brahmi is related to, similar to gotu kola, and it's a cooling, calming herb, good for the nervous system, premier herb for cognitive function, and all cognitive imbalances will, all formulas to treat these conditions would all have brahmi. They would mostly be in formulas, but a brahmi can be taken in many ways. Here's what we call brahmi oil. And brahmi oil is very nice because we put it in I put it in a little bottle called brain oil. Simple. And then you take this oil, and people say it really works quite well. I like the tea mostly, but this is good for vata, particularly have dry nasal passages. You just take a little bit of the oil, and then very nice. And then you don't feel it right away. It has like a slow term effect, and this is very nice for cognitive function. They also do brahmi a lot of times in a ghee, and here we have brain ghee. Brahmi is the main ingredient there, brahmi ghee. And we can take 1 or 2 teaspoons a day, and anybody with some type of attention deficit issue, children, could take that brahmi ghee every day. It's very, very gentle, very subtle, and very effective. Slowly, and it's all particularly good. The brahmi ghee is particularly good for this vata, this overly active, overly stimulated type of mental state where you're not sleeping well. And covering the whole subject of sleep, if you're not sleeping well, that's easier to treat than the mental function. But if you're not sleeping well, you won't have good mental function the next day. So a lot of people just aren't sleeping well for many years. Maybe they're getting up every night to urinate. Maybe their husband's snoring next to them. But you want to get rid of these causes, like clean out the bladder urinary tract so you don't have to get up in the middle of the night, or move the husband in the other room, or give him some herbs for his respiratory problems and fix that problem so you can sleep through the night. Because without good sleep, you're never going to have good cognitive function. So it's always good to take care of these prerequisites first. Fix the digestion, make sure you don't have any malnourishment. Maybe you can take some other supplements or superfoods, or to make sure the nutritional state is good. Get rid of all the stimulants, and make sure you're sleeping very good. So let's see here. Now another formula that I'll tell you, a formula now that's very good, and it's called saraswati. Saraswati means goddess of knowledge. And here I have saraswati formula. It's a formula, about 15 herbs in it. And this formula you can take in many different ways. You can just, and it's more for kind of lighting the fire, getting the fire of intelligence going. And you just take a little pinch, put it in the mouth, and wham. You don't have to swallow it because you want it to go to the brain. That's why Ayurveda uses these herbs through the nose and just puts them in the mouth, because they want to reach this part of the body. They don't want to just drink the tea and it ends up going to the urinary tract and absorbing in the blood and eventually getting to the brain. But it's much quicker just inhaling. So in fact, there's herbs like bacha and other, which is in this saraswati, and you can just inhale it. And even this formula, saraswati, if you just inhale it, woo, really wakes you up right away. So I leave it right on my desk and just take a couple pinches every day. Does wonders. I sell it in a little jar for just $10, just 2 ounces, because it's so potent. You only need to take pinches of it. And people who have not been able to remember their own children's names, dementia, have recovered in a matter of weeks with proper diet, good sleep, good digestion, good nutrition, plenty of oil and fat in the diet, probably brahmi ghee as well, plus this saraswati herb 5 or 6 times a day in little pinches. Within 2-3 weeks, people start remembering right away. In fact, just taking the saraswati just a few days, and you can notice a difference. Elderly people have told me that they went from average bingo player to a champion bingo player by taking that formula. People have told me that their mother or father couldn't remember even their children's names, and within weeks was reading the newspaper again and having full conversations. Many wives have come here for other issues and asked for something for the memory for their husband, and noticed that this memory improved tremendously after just one $10 jar of the saraswati. So saraswati is an ancient herbal formula. So there's really no point to reinvent the wheel or look too far, because they had these type of memory problems in the past, neurological problems in the past, and they made formulas for certain jobs. In fact, this anger and irritability, they have herbs for this. Shankpushpi is a common Indian herb for irritability and for blockage in the brain where it's congested or dull. They have an herb called vacha, which opens up the brain. And vacha is in saraswati as well as brahmi is in there. It's just mixed with other herbs, so it makes a nice formula, and it really works quite well. And of course, if you're going to do the tea or you're going to do the more stimulating herbs, then you don't want to be somebody who has anxiety or nervousness. This is not for somebody with anxiety or nervousness. You could just have brahmi tea all by itself, which is what many Indians do. They just have brahmi tea all by itself all day long. I've met elderly Indian people that tell me, in their late 80s and say, I drink brahmi tea every day and it's working wonders. And I've never had any cognitive problems, memory problems, or neurological issues. And that's, I believe, due to drinking brahmi tea for, 50 years of their lives every day. And that is something that people do. I myself have been drinking my memory tea, and I take brahmi as well in the form of the saraswati. So these herbs work very well, very effective, very quick. So you really want to get the right herb for you or your children or your family member. And it's usually in the form of a formula. Very rarely these herbs are taken by themselves. Brahmi being an exception. Like I said, brahmi tea is one herb that's such a wonderful, calming, sattvic tea. It's good for so many aspects of our health, particularly our mind and our nervous system, that people do drink it all by itself and just grow it in India and then make tea out of it. And it works very well. And the oil also is very good, very good for children, just putting it in their nose. But again, I must emphasize, particularly when it comes to children, that you must really remove these causes, the sugar, the overstimulation, overwork, the poor sleep, malnourishment, poor digestion, and such, and all the coffee and stimulations that we have in our lives. So, and of course, just what we call vata increasing diet, like, skipping meals, not eating enough, being on a weight loss plan, and being underweight and under thin, or not having enough body fat. These would also contribute to more anxiety, more nervousness, more thinking in the brain. And this can lead to these type of problems. I haven't mentioned, but there are, of course, other causes to mental states. I mean, you could have had a head injury, which would, of course, could affect your, and some diseases and infections can affect you. Of course, a brain tumor and, serious type of neurotoxins that you may have could affect your cognitive state as well. So it's always good to look at the big picture and eliminate some of these more serious causes, and then focus on the obvious ones, like I mentioned here: diet, digestion, sleep, and removing stimulants. It's usually the first line of defense. And then the herbs, and you can take these herbs. Many people have taken them for a long time. Like I said, I've known people have taken brahmi tea for 50, 60 years, and I've been drinking a tea with this ginkgo and gotu kola in it for more than 20 years. So the beautiful thing about these herbs is they're just plants, and they're very good for the nervous system, and they can be taken long term. And more serious problems, then you want to get an Ayurvedic formula already made, and the one I'm recommending today is saraswati, and it's just a powder there. So I hope that gives you some ideas, some hope. Like I said, you want to diagnose it properly, get rid of the causes, make sure you understand the type of imbalance you have. You don't need to use fancy medical terms, but you need to understand the type of balance and the causes behind it, and then line up those causes, eliminate the causes, and then based on the type of imbalance that you have, then you would pick the herbs that were for it. So if you had a very sluggish personality and you were slow and you couldn't remember things and you overslept, and then you could have very more stimulating herbal substances, including the green tea, the elethro, ginseng, along with this gotu kola, ginkgo, brahmi, to stimulate the nervous system. So I hope that gives you some ideas, some hope. And if you have more issues or more serious cognitive problems, feel free to contact me, and I will do my best to diagnose your problem and provide you with proper herbal formulas to help you to recover. So I'll stay here and answer a few questions, but for now we'll end that webinar. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.